welcome to your magical messaging and mindset tip with Christine Collins. Hey there, this is Christine Collins, and I wanted to talk today about a topic that I see get kind of thrown around really often, and I thought it might be helpful to share a few insights around this topic. And that is the concept of quote-unquote passive work, or sometimes it's called passive income. And I wanted to dispel a few myths and also illuminate a few things that I think are really vital around the conversation around different styles of working and different types of learning. So this notion of passive is really not correct. It would be more accurate to describe certain types of service as asynchronous. And when we talk about asynchronous delivery, what that means is that it's not happening live with a specific day and time where a service is being delivered. And that can take on a number of different formats. For example, some people may offer an asynchronous type of chat service where you send a message over a chat sequence and you kind of ask and answer questions back and forth and have a conversation. And what's nice about that for both the service provider and the service receiver is that those questions can be asked by the service receiver at a day and time that's convenient for them, so they can pop in the question when it's happening for them in their life in the live moment. So they're sitting down to do something and they're not sure, they have a question, something is coming to mind. They can ask it immediately instead of like saving that question and trying to hold on to it and remember it for a day and time that's 2 weeks away. And then, of course, there are forms like courses, products, support tools, resources of all kinds, PDFs, e-learning. There are a number of different ways that a service can be delivered asynchronously. Now, some of the benefits of that include supporting individuals who are in different time zones but still would like to work together. But perhaps for one of them, it would be the middle of the night if they were trying to set up a live time to have a discussion. It also supports people who have various different life situations where their availability is unpredictable. And that can include everything from medical issues, chronic illness, people with disabilities, people with children, people with family lives that are unpredictable for various reasons, people who perhaps have unreliable technology, or some aspect of their life is not conducive to scheduling a particular day and time to show up live to an event or a meeting. Now that is asynchronous service very broadly, and there are lots of different ways that that can take place. Now sometimes I think that there's a misconception when I hear people talking about passive income that it's something like a person who creates these resources and these tools or offers asynchronous services are just like sitting on the couch eating bonbons and the money's rolling in, and really nothing could be further from the truth. So obviously anybody who has ever delivered an asynchronous service will know exactly what I'm talking about. But in case that has not ever been discussed, I think it's helpful to highlight some of the differences. So asynchronous services still require a tremendous amount of skill, expertise, time, and energy. What's different about it is the when. So obviously, if we're having a live meeting and we're both turning up at the same time, we're both expending our time and our energy at the same moment. And that can certainly create a connection that would not be felt in an asynchronous opportunity. However, that doesn't diminish the time and energy that has gone into the provision of an asynchronous service. So the individual providing that still must expel their considerable time and energy to build or create or deliver whatever that service is. And as we said, that can look a lot of different ways. So if it's a course, this person has perhaps recorded hours of videos They have written hours of blogs or designed their PDF or their resources that they are providing for that receiver, and have poured their expertise, their knowledge, wisdom, and whatever else into that service. Now, while it's true that some of that live component has a lot of benefits that can be sometimes lost with asynchronous support, there are many benefits as well that I think are worth considering. So we already talked through how it can help to compensate for things like time zone discrepancy, unpredictable illness, unpredictable health, unpredictable family situations, unpredictable tech situations. It can really help to mitigate a lot of that for both the service provider and the service receiver. So if either are in those situations, it can really help to create a support structure that allows for a service to be delivered in a way that's accommodating to both. Now, in the form of self-paced e-learning, which I have dubbed SPEL because it just kind of fits perfectly into the magical realm. So self-paced e-learning or course completion that happens asynchronously carries many of those same benefits in terms of supporting the service provider and the service receiver. And I think adds a few additional layers that are worth considering. One of those is direct access to materials. So as opposed to someone who's got all of this self-contained knowledge that they may choose to impart into a conversation, the SPEL format allows for all of the resources, all of the wisdom, all of the knowledge to be conglomerated together and handed over to the receiver. In some ways, they are actually giving much more of themselves because they are taking everything they know, consolidating it into a digestible format, and then handing it directly into the hands of the person who's receiving that material. Now, I had my first ever experience with this when I was working on my master's degrees. And the reason why it was so profound and so powerful for me was because as a student early on in high school, in college, my bachelor's level at university, everything was sitting with the teacher or the professor. Everything was sitting with them. And the students in the class were fully dependent upon, one, having a great facilitator. So we're reliant upon them being skillful at their delivery. And two, their timeline and the timeline of the class structure happening at a particular day and time for a specific length of time. That was the box in which we had to learn. And if you didn't fit inside that box, that day and time, that length of time, you could miss out on some of that learning if you couldn't keep up, if your pace was slower than that of the facilitator, or if your pace was much faster and you wanted to move ahead, you were not able to do those things. Additionally, because I was not the type of student who enjoyed drawing attention to myself, I was not a hand raiser. I was not someone who came into class and asked a lot of questions. And there's lots of things that can be done to work on that, and I realize that, but what I'm saying is that in my experience as a young person who didn't have support and resources for that, I simply didn't get my questions answered most of the time, and I didn't have the direct access to the material to be able to read it ahead of time or to know what the instructor knew until they were ready to tell me. When I had my first experience with an online course where the material was provided for me all at once, and I could kind of get like a bird's eye view of, oh, okay, here's everything that we're going to be covering, and I could kind of dissect and analyze my own path with that material. Now, I still had assignments and things that I had to complete and a certain timeline, but I had access to all of the material at once. And it really helped me to see more globally, what are we doing here? Instead of having things sort of spoon-fed or dripped to me over a span of time. Also, I was able to ask questions in a structure that felt safe to me to send a message or an email versus sitting in a classroom with a lot of other people and having to raise my hand. The other advantage to this style for some people, for many people, is that it offers variation in learning styles. So when there is a pre-designed course, not only can it be added to and improved over time, where the person who has access to it continuously reaps the benefit of the updated wisdom and updated knowledge of that service provider, they are gaining access to different styles of materials such as video and transcription. So they can watch, they can listen, they can read. The pace can be adapted to the unique needs of that person. So if they want to sit down and plow through something all at once, move very quickly, they're really excited, they're juiced up, or they happen to have a block of time where doing that learning all at once just really works for them and they can. Or if they need to take it more slowly, they're not going to feel behind a bunch of other students who are progressing more quickly than they are. So I just wanted to point out some of these subtle things that I think don't get talked about very often, mainly because I definitely see that there's a ton of value in live or one-to-one or group services. And there's no question that there's a high level of connection and excitement that can be built into those types of scenarios. So absolutely not discrediting those whatsoever. But I think that there's also a very important value and benefit that can be derived by both the service provider and the service receiver in examining some of these other formats. And I think really you can even do a hybrid where you have a lovely combination of a little bit of live time and a little bit of self-paced time. And of course, that's up to you. It's up to the individual provider as far as what actually works. But I wanted to offer these up because many of us are in situations where we are dealing with things like medical issues, chronic illness, disabilities, unpredictable lifestyles for a variety of reasons. And building in some amount of asynchronous support can be very beneficial. And I think it's often overlooked or even downgraded or frowned on or minimized because the values and benefits are not openly discussed. So I hope you found this to be helpful. Once again, I'm Christine Collins. You can always check me out further at transformcreate.com. And until we meet again, I wish you the most magical and creative rest of your day. Thanks for listening. This is Christine Collins at transformcreate.com.